Hello, good afternoon. Welcome, one and all. Today, we're going to be getting back into Eulis, the history of love, its wondrous magic, chemistry, rules, laws, moods, and rationale, being the third revelation of soul and sex. Also, reply to Why is Man Immortal? The solution of the Darwin problem, an entirely new theory. That's the whole title. And that's by Paschal Beverly Randolph. And we're going to get into the second rating here, and we left off at Roman numeral 3. As previously remarked herein, writers upon the general topics of love and its offices, uses, abuses, nature, moods, and modes have, in the main, been content with the merely superficial or external view thereof, and have, as a general thing, utterly ignored most, if not all, of the other and deeper significances attached thereunto. And not one of them has even attempted to tell mankind any more of the principles underlying sex, love, and their copula, passion, or desire than anyone's personal experience suggests. But we have plenty of hard, dry, pseudoscientific flummery, else a long row of medical platitudes wholly useless, because totally indigestible by the average intellectual stomach. That was one sentence. Who of them all has given us the rationale of the orgasm, the why and wherefore, or the cause of its being a thing of apparently no moment whatever at certain times and under circumstances, yet at another will almost shock the human soul out of its earthly tenement, the body, by its keen, incisive, cutting, awful intensity? Which of them all has explained what every one ought to, but does not know to be a fact, i.e., that, as explained in the New Mola, which is MOLA, and elsewhere in this book, human conjugation is or may be triple. That is, it may be of soul, spirit, or body, none or either, and the binary minglings of the three in various degrees, even to an infinity. For instance, 1 part soul, 10 spirit, 500 of more body, and so on, but never true or normal except in exact equations. Even tens or hundreds, according even tens or hundreds, according as the participants are high or low. The philosophers never even guessed at this truth. Hey, Matt, man. Hey, Jen. Welcome in. Welcome all. Who of them has told or can tell why the nuptium fairly laps the very soul itself? Of each participant, too, in the tenderest, softest, truly human, because strictly human, joy at one time, yet another gives naught but cruel pain, else is but a nervous spasm, unsatisfactory to one party, and injurious to both, and yet the same people in both instances? Nuptium. Does that just mean married, like nuptial? Nuptium. Nuptium. Yeah. Nuptium. So it is just relating to marriage or weddings, even though it's not in Google. Excuse me. Why is it, O learned anthropologists, that the generative right will at one time wholly unman one, yet at another, same ones too, will fill him with the most exquisite, manly, gallant sensibility, inspire him with the most lofty virtue and high resolve, charge him to the lips with true and royal courage, yet at another time transmute him into an arrant coward and miserable poltroon? Poltroon. What's a poltroon? I mean, I get the gist of what he's saying, I think. Poltroon, an utter coward. Oh, shit. An utter coward. Poltroon. Poltroon.
Troon. Poltroon.
Poltroon. Okay. Cool. Archaic. I love archaic words. And I'm learning more by the day. Hey, Alex, good to see you, man. Welcome in. An errant coward and miserable poltroon. And mirabile dictu. And mirabile dictu. Is that 2 words? I think so. Same parties still. Mirabile dictu. Thank you. Yeah, mirabile dictu. Wonderful to relate.
Mirabile dictu.
Mirabile dictu. Mirabile dictu.
Mirabile dictu.
Ooh, I don't know if I've ever heard this girl's voice. I love it.
Mirabile dictu.
Mirabile dictu. Cool. Wonderful to relate. Mirabile dictu. Cool. I love that. And mirabile dictu, same parties still, bring pain, keen mental agony, shamefacedness, and suicidal thought, yet at another result in pride, joy, gratefulness, generosity, and mental summer, with physical springtime. Oh, that was a question. With physical springtime? Why will this mysterious duty, for such it is in God's sight, who by its means peoples the worlds, and stalks the starry spaces, plunge us into the deepest blues, and fang our souls with remorse cruel as the grave, relentless as the Hadean Gulf of Milton? And the other poets. Okay, so he's a poet. Yet at another induce a state of feeling in soul and spirit quite approaching the supposed angelic. Why? And a myriad gaping crowd of scalpel drivers repeat the sound and echo, why? The answers? Their science don't know, therefore cannot answer. Wherefore, I must take up my pen to respond to it. For those who need the information, it is my lot to impart. Since Dr. Dixon of The Scalpel printed his great and warning essay on the organic law of sex, and the anonymous author of Satan in Society faintly echoed those stirring notes, nothing has been given to the world on the mighty subject worthy of attention or record. Neither essay filled or required bill, and for that reason I print this series of salvatory counsels. I may, and probably shall ere long, be numbered with the armies of the dead. And who then will give Randolph's thoughts to the world? I don't know. We're doing it right now! And therefore, give at least a part of them before I leave for good and all. Consequently, I shall now convey certain brief and concise forms of certain knowledges, which, if abided by, will prolong many a life and add immeasurable happiness to mankind. I wish to be clearly understood, and yet not to offend the most delicate of fastidious. Not to offend the most delicate or fastidious. For God is my judge that my sole aim is to teach certain truths, whose mission is to stop the tide of crime, misery, and wretchedness now devastating our land. I am forced to use similes, but trust to be fully and entirely understood. 4. That way. I love yous too. Welcome in. Now for the answer to the loud whys of section 3. The states resulting happily from human fusion were because there really was a human fusion. And that's just it. In all the other cases, there was either too much body, too much spirit, and too little or no soul at all. They were violations of the love law, and the suffering was the penalty. It is a pity that 10,000 times the pain was not the direct result of every violation of the organic law, and if every proposed debauchery could or would but die in the attempt, the world would soon be a great deal better off. Where love sits enshrined over the married man's chamber door, and reason guides his conduct toward his wife where therein, peace will reign, and the sale of syphilitic and the sale of syphilitic remedials vastly decrease. No pangs follow the celebration of the rites of holy love, no nor judicious use of the divine, but abused faculties of our nature. Unless love equals passion, marriage rights are never right. That's all. 5. The grand mistake made by psychologists and other essayists writing on the current topic consists in their persistent overlooking of the fact that man and woman are not the same. The male is an incarnation, so to speak, of one side of deity, one hemisphere of the imperial oversoul, one section of nature, matter, and superlative and infinite mind of minds, while the human female represents and is an embodiment of the other. For there is a male and female side to all these, and the two genders correspond to, represent, affiliate with, derive their respective powers from, and are attached to those respective sides. Thus, either alone is an incompleteness. They belong to opposite sides of nature, and it requires a bridge to span the amazing gulf that rolls between them. The magnetic materials for said bridge exists in nearly all human beings. Its name is love. Bridges are in great demand. There's room for more. 6. No true man can help loving all true women, not in the grosser sense, but in the higher one of soul. Not such a lie, a man out of his manhood, run him in debt, empty his purse, and rob him of his peace, until he actually jeopardizes his soul's salvation, pretending to love him, but meaning not one word of it, laughing at him in the sleeve, and triumphing in the knowledge of how smart she was, how great a fool was he. That's the sort of woman who, from the year one, have driven hard bargains with the masculine portion of the race, and rushed many a good man down the hills of ruin and gloom, and horrid blank despair. Nor are they all dead yet. I have neither time, assistance, or inclination for moralizing, but little patience with scripture quoters. None at all with the modern reform tribes of the land and age, besides which I cordially despise all women haters on one side. And, oh my gosh, okay, so and Westernerites, which means man haters. Oh my gosh. And Westernerites, which is capitalized, Wesnerites, man haters on the other. And no words of mine can express my utter abhorrence of the things miscalled men, who practically regard woman as if she were nothing but a pleasure vehicle to be kissed, petted, and ill-treated in alternate slices. But I feel quite as much indignant contempt for that large class of women who are ever ready to use their beauty as a trap to catch male gudgeons or male gudgeons. Oh no, Gudgeons, gudgeons, male gudgeons. to catch male gudgeons. Gudgeons!
Mirabile dictu.
Mirabile dictu. Cool. Gudgeons. Gudgeon. A small edible European freshwater fish. No. Archaic. A credulous or easily fooled person.
Gudgeon.
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 Gudgeon. Okay. Code, welcome. Dude, you have got to go back and watch the last reading of DMT, the spirit molecule. I'm telling you, dude, numbers, letters. You got to do it, buddy. You got to see it. Or I mean, do it like you feel it, but I think you'll love it. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Mr. Hugh, welcome in. Awesome. So wait, gudgeon was something about a coward or a credulous or easily fooled person. Okay. So someone easily fooled. Okay. Gullible. A male gudgeons. Okay. Beauty as a... Okay. Oh, wait. But I feel quite as much indignant contempt for that large class of women who are ever ready to use their beauty as a trap to catch male gudgeons, who look on all men as fair game, to be lied to and played on, generally to the tune of rustling silks and crisp blank balls. Okay. Generally to the tune of rustling silks and crisp banknotes, and whose utter heartlessness belies the index of their sex. There's quite as many heartless she's as he's in the world. Only that one soulless woman is a greater danger to the world than a dozen scoundrelly men, for her sex gives her points of advantage denied to all of the opposite gender. A good true woman is a diamond, a bad and heartless one worse than Milton's Satan. Sitting near me in the eating house where I dined yesterday were 4 grave men deliberately traducing their mother's sex. Deliberately traducing. Okay, traducing. I do like silk, but I like cotton too. Traducing. Traduce. Speak badly of or tell lies about someone so as to damage their reputation. Okay, wow, that's bullshit.
Traduce.
Traduce. He said it like it was such a nice word, right?
Traduce.
Traduce. Okay. Okay, so sitting near me in the eating house where I dined yesterday were 4 grave men deliberately traducing their mother's sex. They went into paroxysms of what they called fun, anent pregnancy, menstruation, and sexive matters generally. Paroxysms and anent. Wow, okay. Paroxysms. Which is Paroxysms. Sudden attack or violent expression of a particular emotion or activity. A paroxysm of weeping or laughing. Paroxysms. Okay. Whoa, that's a cool word. Or in medicine, a sudden recurrence or attack of a disease, a sudden worsening of symptoms. Paroxysms. And then anent. Oh.
Paroxysm.
Oh, paroxysm. Paroxysm.
Paroxysm.
Okay. Paroxysm. They went into paroxysms of what they called fun, anent pregnancy. ANENT. Concerning, about. It's Scottish. It's archaic.
Anent.
Anent. Cool. Okay. Balls. How do I? Parox. Anent. Anent.
Paroxysm.
Paroxysm. Okay. Anent. Paroxysm. They went into paroxysms of what they called fun, anent pregnancy, menstruation, and sexive matters generally. They and millions like them everywhere, in every barroom, hotel, stable, store, grocery, consider it smart and manly to, even before young boys, habitually blaspheme deity and dishonor the mothers that bore them by irreverent, flippant, and obscene speech concerning the sex. Poor wretches who disgrace the forms they bear by speaking of women as if she were nothing but a target for filthy tongues to hurl their venom at, or, at best, as destined victims to their own abominable lubricity. Lubricity. Oily smoothness. It lubricates. Oh, lubricity. I said it right. Okay. Lubricity. Okay, cool.
Lubricity.
That guy's.
Lubricity.
Thank you. Lubricity. Okay. All right. Okay. Their own abominable lubricity, mere extinguishers of the bale fires rioting in their own veins, the venomous fever passions of their own gross natures, and far more ignoble than those of the four-footed dog that runs our streets. It made me sick, it always did, to listen to the outrageous talk going on everywhere about women. Whenever two or more human males of the civilized kind happen to get together for an hour. Even stately officials, fathers of families, do. And if not, at least often allow it in their presence, which is almost as bad. So almost universal is this foul talk, to be heard everywhere at any time, ribald, coarse, obscene, and altogether devilish, that it is no wonder that the public mind is debauched and totally demoralized. It is a curious fact that people will talk smut, laugh heartily at coarse jokes and improbable stories concerning the eternal God's method of peopling the worlds and filling up the starry domes beyond the grave, when of all human deeds it is the most sacred, serious, and laughless. No human being laughs then, for the weight of worlds rests upon human shoulders. It is a bad sign many man hangs out when he makes fun of what ought to challenge his holiest emotions and most profound respect. There was a young man of the fun-making genus, a fellow whose nature was inflamed nearly a year before his birth, and who kept it up to boiling point by food and drink, and the secret books he first read, and then so artfully concealed that the servant girls were sure to find them. Read, get detected, of course, by the owner. Result, destruction to poor she. Brag by he, who of course was petted and made much of, while his victim's head in time hung low, for a bleeding heart was breaking. Well, this Lothargio's eyes used to fairly glisten when they rested upon any young female form, and the burden of his talk was the victories he had won over two confiding women. Brag. It so happened that he was one of a jury of inquest over the dead body of poor Maria Lee, a child of 16 summers, whom a rich merchant of London had betrayed, and then procured a double murder at the hands of an abortionist. Poor child! She bled to death from a skewer of steel run clean through both the uterus and its contents. The rich merchant paid some money, some more in charity. By and by joined the church, and his sin was forgotten. The medical practitioner went to jail for 6 months, was pardoned out in 5 weeks, and the babe went back to heaven in the arms of its slaughtered mother. Balls. But there she lie, poor child, upon the long work table of good Simon Scott, the carpenter, and pale and delicate as finest Parian marble. Oh, does that mean like Parisian or Parian? The finest Parian marble or waxwork and beautiful. Oh God, how immortally beautiful. Parian. And it's capitalized. Parian, relating to Paros, of the fine white marble for which it is renowned. A native or inhabitant of Paros. Wow, I never even knew of Paros, dude.
Parian.
Where's Paros? It's in Greece. I love it. I really want to go to Greece. Cool. Images. Wow. Cool. Okay. As soon as I read that, Jen, though, Grease lightning. Like I start. Yeah, I see that musical in my head. Bum 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 bum. Okay, all right. Okay, I am gonna get back. Okay. Parian. We're talking about marble and okay. Where is it? Scoundrelly men. No, I'm not there. There it is. But there she lie, poor child, upon the long work table of good Simon Scott, the carpenter, all pale and delicate as finest Parian marble or waxwork, and beautiful. Oh God, how immortally beautiful! Just as deity had fashioned her before the rich merchant of London and his friends, the doctor and death had finished the work so fairly begun. Finish her for the grave and heaven. For if ever its golden portals sowing wide to admit a shining soul, surely it's like the ink is messed up. Surely its lunges will resolve like lightning to let in a ruined woman. I'm not sure if that's what it says. If it says lungeons. DKs, I missed you. Welcome in, man. Awesome to see you. Well, the autopsy went on. The facts were disclosed. And while the surgeon piled his work, and a strong magnifying glass was handed round among the jurymen, none were so eager and earnest in scrutiny and question as the fast young man, the general lover alluded to. He carefully examined lungs, brain, stomach, breasts, heart, uterus, all. And as he laid down the glass, he muttered, "And I, with the womb in my hand and the knife between my teeth, echoed from the floor of my soul his words, quote, "Murdered, by God, curse him, them, and me too, if ever I," end quote. And there he stopped, but not till his oath was registered up there where vows are never broken and nothing is forgotten. If I could, I certainly would have every male over 15 witness just such a redemptive and impressive scene, and would take every boy through the wards of a hospital for syphilides. I would have every girl taught the long-forgotten truth that her soul is worth, at least, quite as much as her body, something they little dream of. So ardent is their worship at the shrine of Saint Frivolous. Had I been so instructed long years agone, I had escaped very many subsequent mistakes and consequent misery, but I, like most others, was a long time in learning thoroughly the tremendous difference between the chaste desire of pure love and the lurid fires of burning lust. I learned it at last. Hence this and my later books, which I trust will serve as beacons to warn mankind off sunken rocks and reefs long after these hands have returned to primal dust, and the soul that animates them is kneeling at the feet of the redeeming God. 7. From the earliest historical ages, an unnatural custom has prevailed, and its results have been fearful. Sub rosa, mainly. For the victims generally grieve, mourn, and die in silence. I refer to the abominable practice of old men marrying young girls. I know that the temptations, youth and freshness on one side, influence, society, position, money on the other, are great indeed. But for all that, it is a something against which that same society ought to turn, and one that God himself frowns down. For never a marriage among them all produced other fruits than discontent, jealousy, madness, and despair. Campbell, in that odd book, Hermippus, or the Sage's Triumph, lays it down that the old can regain many months or even years of life by consorting and cohabiting with the young. It is and is not true. If it were possible for two people, one 60, the other 16, to fully and mutually love each other, then the girl would help the man, and the man increase the girl's recuperative power. But happily, girls of 16 can't love 60. No, how can you fix it? I knew a man in New York State who literally drove his daughter, a thin, pale, waxen child of 16, into a hated marriage of 65 or thereabouts. 2 years afterwards, a child was buried in the West, and 4 weeks afterwards, the father bore his daughter's body to bury it and his happiness together in one grave on the hillside. Were a man of that age to use means to thus get a daughter of not to get Were a man of that age to use means to thus get a daughter of mine, say 25 years ago, when I was young, I think there'd have been a third-class funeral in the town, for I regard it as a crime even worse than some sorts of murder. And here are my reasons why. It is safe to say, where occasionally the young girl marries an old man, and good results follow, and that such cases are extraordinary and altogether exceptional to an almost universal rule, because the old man's motive is to prolong his miserable existence at the expense of a fresh young life. And of course, his love is but a selfish, mean, self-preservative instinct, while the girl's love is one of advantage, either money-wise or from gratitude, and therefore not real love at all, because in the very nature of things, she can but feel an utter disgust, an awful and appalling horror and loathing at the bare thought, much less the sickening ordeal of fact. Happiness is out of the question, and the case is exceedingly rare where they produce anything but misery. Nearly everyone will at once see many of the reasons why, but there are some others not quite so self apparent, and here they are. In marriage and its offices, there must be a reciprocal play of electric and magnetic forces. For unless mutual, there's disaster just ahead, and sunken rocks all around, upon which that ship of wedlock is sure, sooner or later, to run aground. And in the wreck that follows, someone is sure to be lost. And that someone is a young wife tied of an old, besotted, worn out man. The great disparity of years, magnetism, vitality, and life force between such an ill starred couple renders it utterly impossible for the young thing to have one single taste or desire in common with the old dotard she calls husband. She cannot absorb, reciprocate, or assimilate him, or aught pertaining to him magnetically or in any other way, and she even loathes the food he dotes on and the liquids he consumes to keep his unnatural fever up. The magnetic auras issuant from them are alike, and to her repellent after a time, if not at once. He consumes, absorbs, and assimilates the totality of her vital life, and at length she dies for sheer want of that whereof he robs her. But a still stronger protest is here. It is found in the well-known fact that the old and coarse magnetism of the man poisons both the body and soul of the young girl, seals up the fountains of her youth and responsive power, shuts the door of amative joy in her face, robs her of her rights as wife, suggests evil thoughts to her mind, and paves the way for her to yield heart and all else to whoever near her own age tries to win her, by giving her a kind of love she needs and which is proper for one of her tender years. Where the disparity is even 20 years, it is infinitely far too great. 10 years difference is a deal too much, and 5 the limit, save in the case of bloodless girls and very magnetic men, in which union the female thrives on the flesh or on the fresh vitality of the man. But even in such cases, she must be blonde, and he the opposite, always. For if the reverse happens, she's a doomed woman, and he a physical imbecile, in 5 years' time at the utmost. In the case of ordinary December and May marriages, he robs her of life. He gestates horror instead of affection. For in natural marriage, souls blend and interfuse more or less perfectly after a time. And those who have lived happily, or rather, those who have lived unhappy lives, often find out how well they loved at heart after death comes tapping at the gate, if not before. Then it is, quote, "Who'd have thought this?" end quote, but it's too late. Such antipodes cannot blend, because the girl is peachy downy, supple, gay, lithe, and lightsome, but the man lithy, that is limy, calcareous, and they will not mingle in any more intimate relations than that of father and daughter. So what was that word? Lithy. GKs. Lithy. Easily bent, pliable, supple. Cool. I like it. Ay, ay, ay. Where is that lithy word? There it is. Some people have young souls in old bodies, in which case things are not so bad. But where such soul youth does not exist, and the parties live in passable harmony, still there's great harm done. In fact, constructive wifeicide. So that's so funny. I just mean when I approached that word at first, I saw Wi-Fi, right? But constructive wifeicide. And this is the reason why. A wife is apt to become a mother quicker by an old husband than a young one, because the old man's blood is cooler, his passions slower in culmination, and he is likely to conceive from sheer weariness and physical and mental inability to guard herself. Besides which, she never dreams of danger or of the female fitness, or rather, the female finesse she would put in play against a younger husband. If ever it is right to prevent conception, I believe it is in exceptional cases like this before us, for his old blood, through his child, courses through her young veins, making her old prematurely, loading her down with the accumulated mental, physical, and moral, magnetic, and other diseases of all his long run of years. Besides which, his child is born old, never knows what babyhood is or childhood means. It looks, feels, is an oddity, knows no infantile days or pleasures, and is thus, by its own father, robbed and cheated out of its best and most halcyon days. Halcyon, Halcyon. Halcyon. Denoting a period of time in the past that was idyllically happy and peaceful. Wait, it's also a bird, but I don't know. It seems something else. Halcyon. A mythical bird said by ancient writers to breed in a nest floating at sea at the winter solstice, charming the wind and waves to calm. That's what I've read before about that. I love it. Wow, what a pretty bird. Let's see how you say it.
Halcyon.
Halcyon. Okay, thank you. Halcyon. Shoot. Wait, I'm over here. Ooh, my magnet came undone. Hey. There we go. It's somewhere in here. Halcyon. Of its best and most halcyon days. But that's not the worst of it yet. For the offspring of January is sure to be nearly as calcareous as its father. Its bones are harder, firmer, more solid than its right. Its cranium is broader, flatter, thicker, and dense as those of a grown man. And if the young mother escapes forceps delivery, or a still worse operation, she may consider herself a fortunate woman. May God pity all such, and alas, thousands of such there are. How often we hear the expression, quote, "She tapped the fountains of his love," end quote. Well, the thing is possible, yet is seldom realized, for that can only be done when both are maritally conjoined, while influenced by a passion born of perfect, deep, soul-founded love. And then, then, the cup of human bliss is indeed full. Why? Because a portion of each soul becomes incorporate in the other, and the mystical blending, quote, "they twain shall be one," end quote, is complete. But souls can be tapped without reciprocity, right? Yeah. But souls can be tapped without reciprocity. For the young wife's soul is drained from her, either directly as a sponge by her old husband, or indirectly through the uterine and vaginal diseases sure to be her lot sooner or later. For the fluids of the twain cannot blend, except in so far forth as to inoculate the poor young thing with malignant poison, by which I do not here mean syphilis, but I do mean that worse poison resultant from chemical incompatibility, mental and affectional disgust and repulsion, which leave ulcers and corrosion in their train, with death in the foreground. Gentlemen MDs, here's the origin of evil. For even if the husband is not old, but only a hellion to her, she's your patient straightway. She's your patient straightway, and you have a fine chance for the sale of lotions, washes, pessaries, supporters, and all the other vast paraphernalia born of non-love in the Auld House at Home. AULD. Auld Lang Syne. Old. It means old. The Old House at Home. Birth months. Children conceived in May, June, July, August, and September, and who therefore are born in February, March, April, May, and June, are unquestionably better constituted and will live longer, have more character and power than when the double events occur in other months, because nature and weather are more, I looked this up before, propitious at the start. Conceptions occurring in the morning hours are a myriad degrees better than when that event occurs at other periods. A person's shadow on the wall in a room by lamplight will reveal more of that party's real character than all the phrenology extant. And in its minute phases, too. Just as a peculiar smile, observation, movement, or tone of voice will sometimes tell in a second more of a person's real self than an acquaintance of 50 intimate years would otherwise. Shoot. Pillow. Oh, it feels good. Okay. Gender in the human being is a very different thing from gender in the animate kingdoms below the grade of man. In the beasts, it means propagation, mainly for food purposes, but in man, it stands for and implies a great deal more, as will be seen hereinafter. At this point, I wish to pick a flaw or two in the reasonings of the popular psychologists and phrenologists of the day, every one of whom urge their moral pleas mainly upon the ground that the marital functional nuptive right of the human being is precisely on a par with the creative act of beasts. That is, that God intended it in man as in animals to be solely and only a propagative function. That and nothing more. It is for generative ends only, and the nervous state precedent to and succeeding it is but the natural spur to the God-foreseen result. Therefore, say they, the sacred nuptium is permissible only when both parents desire to add one more unit to the great world's population. Now these philosophers either are conscious hypocrites. Now these philosophers either are conscious hypocrites, teaching that what they don't believe, else they think us fools, and we know they are. I have seen a book of nearly 1,000 mortal pages, and that doctrine was the whole gist and burden of its labored and lame argument. Lame, for its author shows in 100 places that he don't believe his own logic. He continually confutes himself, and the completest refutation to refute. Refutation of the absurdity is to be found in the words, "It is not true." Why? Because man is not a beast and is not governed by identical laws, but comes under and is played upon and moved by higher ones altogether than such as rule in the kingdom of beasts, birds, reptiles, fish, and insects. In those realms, sex is an instinct, a periodical function, and appetite. In man, it is a fact of soul, a principle, and a mystical and divine power, altogether superior to the passing furor of beasts that perish and are known no more. And it means more in his case than it does in all other departments of the sentient world, singly or combined. I here throw down the gauntlet and state, boldly and squarely, right in the teeth of all the so called scientists on earth or under heaven, that the sexive principle, habitude, and instinct in the human is not in very many respects identical with that of the non human inhabitants of the globe we live on. In the contrary, in us it means, implies, and leads to immeasurably more and deeper things than the average thinker ever dreams of or imagines. In the organic kingdoms outside of the human, the instinct is blindly obeyed, and self seeking there, as everywhere else, and not propagation at all, is the all powerful impelling motive, if motive there be. Bears and horses, cats and fishes, dogs and flies, and every other living thing bearing gender, invariably trouble themselves not at all concerning increase of family, or prolongation of the species, until such increase appears, by which time nature has brought a new new instinct and passion into play. Parallels between man and beasts are not correct or just, for in beasts sexive and parental instincts are separate affairs. In man, they coexist. In beasts, the offspring and parents become disunited at maturity. In the human, the practical relationship lasts not only to the gates of the grave, but leaps the barriers of death and flourishes in the far off heaven, and will till the universe grows old, and time himself topples with hoary age. We are gravely told that animals obey the impulse once a year or season, as the case may be, that man ought to go and do likewise. But he won't, nor will these self-same philosophers, I'm sure of that, especially in their own especial and particular cases, because man is a myriad grades or degrees higher and finer in organization than the animals, and his nature calls for more than theirs possibly can or does. They obey the instinct. It is the spur to propagation, but the beast, just like man, up to a given point, risks all for the spur and cares nothing for subsequent consequences, but leaves them for nature to attend to. And she does it like the kind, dear old mother that she is. In the average human, the spur is all that's cared for at the time, albeit consequences are foreseen and due provisions made. For we marry and mate, beasts only mate, and marriage is unknown to them. Not one human couple in 50 millions propagate on purpose, for as a rule it is impossible. Not so with beasts. For 1 hour seals the origin of the progenal result, and men mark the periods, and know to a day when to look for the new animal. But we can only guess the time when our eyes shall gladden at the sight of a new soul God sends to cheer and bless us. We are all accidents, and not a few of us unhappy ones. I, for instance. To apply rules to man applicable to animals alone is an insult to the human race. Stripiculture, or the rearing of better children, will never succeed upon agricultural, stock farm, or barnyard principles. True, nature requires a rich soil to produce high grades of fruit, whether human or other sorts. But in the former, she requires the richest of fertilizers, and its name is love. Give her that, and she'll make your eyes glisten at the beauty of the work she does. Deprive her of it, and crab apples are the result. And a human crab is the gnarliest and most bitter fruit in all God's garden. In the lower kingdoms, nature does her best to produce a superior grade of body. In the human world, she works wholly to produce a loftier order of soul in its triplicate divisions: intellect, imagination, emotion, and is never satisfied until success fairly crowns her efforts. A handsome race physically I never saw, oh no, a handsomer race physically I never saw than the modern Greek, nor such a perfect race of scamps. For your romantic rascal can discount all others on the earth, if we accept these of New York and Boston, who are lords paramount in all sorts of villainy, from the picking of the pocket to stealing a railway. Quote, I guess I'll make an experiment, only just one, says many a man. And he makes it. The upshot being that from the instant he does so, home ceases to be such to him, and any woman's present and activities is preferable to those of his wife. But why? Simply because his imagination has rendered the other woman's charms 5,000 times more important than they actually are, and yet they are sufficient to enable him to draw despairing estimates between solid wife and fleeting mistress. New fire, strange blood, has inspired him with fresh passion, and he don't care for the old wife in presence of the new harlot, and so he abuses one and lavishes all in presence of the new harlot, and so he abuses one and lavishes all he has on the other. But you just wait a bit. Did I just read that twice? I think so. But you just wait a bit. We'll see how it works in the end. And so will he, and happily too, if it be not too late. 3 weeks' experience with a mistress will cure almost any man of that sort of weakness. If he have not, by that time, buried his wife's love in a grave 10,000 resurrectionless fathoms deep. He did not know that the strange, new, exciting magnetism meant death to his home love, desolation to his hearthstone, isolation to his heart, and ruin to his happiness. Yet it did and does, and eternally will, because it is scortatory, malign, fiery, and while it effectually displaces and kills home love, it fails to satisfy, and its end is bitter ashes. Scortatory. Okay. Tom, welcome in. Good to see you, dude. Happy Friday. Scortatory. Pertaining to scortation, fornicatory, lewd. So it pertains to lewdness or scortatory. How do you say it?
Scortatory or scortatry.
Scortatory. Scortatory. Scortatory.
Scortatory or scortatry.
Scortatory. Okay, cool. Thank you. Oh, gotta get my corners. Lewdness. Okay. Because it is scortatory, malign, fiery. And while it effectually displaces and kills home love, it fails to satisfy, and its end is bitter ashes. In a weak moment, many a man, fired with sudden and electric fire, has fallen into passion's dreadful snare, and for a moment of delirious joy has bartered off a whole life of happiness. For when once one indulges in stolen fruit, which may be sweet, but is never so good as that which grows on one's own trees, the habit becomes fixed and just once lands him or her neck deep in perdition. This talk or his talk or hers, ought to be not just once, but it's all very fine, sir or madam, but it won't pay, and I'll see you in, well, you can guess where first. That's human talk. Dang. So we're at 1 hour right now. Hey, did I miss 8? I guess I just missed where it was. Seven. What? Why are we already at 9 then? I guess they forgot 8. Okay, I think I'm going to end with this section 9 here. 9. As already said herein, marriage, by which term hereinafter, whenever and wherever printed in italic letters, I mean the nuptive union of the sexes. Easy for me to say. And it is only really nuptive when love is the prompter. Otherwise, it is a desecration and worse than beastly profanation. Is productive of an entire series of effects and results aside from the perpetuatory or propagative perpetuatory and propagative one, wherein man and animals are alike, and therein only. For in them sex distinctions are, of course, merely bodily, while in the human it involves and embraces the entire vast domain of both body, soul, and the interwoven spirit. In the non-human races, the marriage office ceases when the germ is lodged, but in the human being, its offices only begin at that point, for its results continue, whether the rite be propagative, is that how you say it? Propagative or no, not only through an arc or chord of fleeting time, but they, the results, stretch away into and through the infinite and eternal spaces, and probably cease not, but endure forever and forever. If there is one thing more certain after death than another, it is that every immortal man and woman of us is bound and doomed to have all love and lust escapades universally known. We are destined to meet all with whom we have been carnally intimate in any degree, from that of pure and gentle love to the horror and violence of inhuman rape. Every carnal association affects us, leaves its mark on us and the other, and some there be who will be astonished that their whole career was turned on earth in consequence of such or such an fact, and that defeat followed them in afterlife by reason of the invisible presence of some wronged victims, married or not. Nor is this all, for every escapade mingles magnetisms more or less, and a man in New York in 1875 may feel the life going out of him day by day, himself not even suspecting that a dozen or more women in as many different parts of the earth, or even from the spaces, are at that instant thinking of him, yearning for him, voluntarily or not, and are drawing out his soul just as easily and surely as he drew their life through honeyed lips 10, 20, or 30 years before. Wherefore, libertinism, and Cyprianism are attended with strange penalties. Libertinism and Cyprianism. I don't know what that means. Libertinism. I thought about that. Like, I've done cord cutting things for all the people I was ever intimate with. But I mean, I still have memories too, right? Okay, so libertine, a person, especially a man who behaves without moral principles or a sense of responsibility, especially in sexual matters. Libertinism and Cyprianism. Prostitute, Cyprian. Wow, I can't believe I never knew that. Cyprian was a bishop of Carthage and an early Christian writer of Berber descent. Berber. Ha! Many of whose Latin works are extant. He is recognized as a saint in the Western and Eastern churches. He was born around the beginning of the 3rd century in North Africa, perhaps at Carthage, where he received a classical education. Cyprian. Wow. Okay. Wherefore, libertinism and Cyprianism are attended with strange penalties. In the truly human being, the non-savage and barbaric specimens of the races, marriage never degrades the parties either in their own or each other's eyes, but it purifies the heart and soul, uplifts them to the Father, is really pulcritudinem, pulcritudinem dividis conjunctum, as it ever should be. That is, beauty and divinity joined as one. Thank you. I needed that. It therefore becomes, in this mystic light, instantly the holiest and most effective of all possible prayers, hence the most potent and tremendous energy and agency in the entire material and hyperphysical universe. Let me tell you, reader, how and why this is so. But before I do it, just look at Jugurtha, Attila, Nero, and the Bonapartes with, who's Jugurtha? With scores of other scourges of God and the human world, called into being in an instant of time to lash the earth to agony, a prayer of evil guild, silently but effectively uttered at the instant of their descent into the matrices that thereafter gave them to the world. Is not this sufficient to prove the truth of what I call the most effective prayer? Turn the page and behold a Christ, St. John, Buddha, Confucius, and see the results of peaceful prayer, uttered silently too, exactly as in the other case or cases. But there are other proofs. That was fascinating. I am going to read 10 because that just means that I'm going to end on page 33. Ten, that the creative function is the highest force in us, as it is in and of the deity, admits of no denial, for it ought to be, if it is not, a perfectly self-evident proposition, axiomatic in its nature, and therefore requiring no attempt toward its demonstration. For it is palpably clear that two principles are interwoven and reciprocally acting and reacting upon each other everywhere and in all things in the universe whereof we know. These principles are male and female, and both alike are manifestations or modes of the superlative and ineffable master potency, power, energy, or overlapping, subtending, underlying, crowning essence of the universal realm, call it by whatever name you will, and it, the bisexive energy, displayed all around, demonstrates itself to be the imperial force of all that is. To it all things are subsidiary. To it all things bow, bend, acknowledge the peremptory sway of, and without which the all that is would become a blank and starless void, as terrible as eternal night itself, more cheerless than the grave, a radical nihility, nihility, so utterly benumbered and benumbing that destruction itself were tame in comparison. God is supposed to be a dual being, so is man, but deity is dual in a double sense. That is to say, God is positively male and positively female, while also, as in man, all the masculine or electric attributes of God are pervaded by the magnetic feminine principle. We all know that the better side of man is the she or mother side, and that form, oh, and that from it spring all the major elements of both his greatness and his goodness. And we admire an intellectual giant while we adore a loving man, because from his love, not his intellect, arises all of goodness, inspiration, aspiration, generosity of soul, which characterizes him. We are pleased with the Platos, but we worship the Christs, Plato's. It is the softer side of soul that generates moral or any other real grandeur, and makes great deeds possible to man. For it is that alone which has power to transmute man, the savage, into man, the incarnate demigod. All sentient and non-sentient being is more or less pervaded, according to capacity, with what I may call the male and female aura or effluence of the great supreme, the unknown and unknowable deity. And all these incarnations of the original life, save only the humans, are distinctive and radically either wholly male or female. True, there are among the lower types and forms of organic life a few seeming exceptions, as the so-called hermaphrodites, but in reality, such are apparent only, for examination in the light of modern science proves all such organisms to be a union of the two principles in a single body, and not a fusion, by any means, and that the male side fecundates the other. Balls, I looked that up recently. But a human, canine, equine, bovine, or any other bisexed being is an utterly impossible thing, all those affirming to the contrary notwithstanding. There are and have been malformations claimed to be proofs of dual gender, but they were really one or the other. Below man, while the sexes are distinct in him as a principle, not a physical fact, they for the first time fuse and blend, at least on this, and probably upon every other soul-bearing world in the eternal vaults of space. It is this blending of sex in soul that makes us what we are. For were we not half mother, our Father's influence upon us would drive the world to chaos in a year. And all that is really excellent in us is the capacity to love and grow, and nothing is capable of love but man. There is a curious proof of the soundness of a foregoing statement, yet it seems to have escaped the notice of the scientists. I allude to the notorious fact that some womb bearers, wives, and mothers too, are females only physically, while spiritually, mentally, morally, psychically, and in every other way but one, they were and are wholly hard, cold, masculine beings, living contradictions of the statements their forms and functions declare to the world. On the other hand, many who wear the phallic sign of gender are no more men in soul than is the little romping lass of 5 brief summers, a full-grown, full-blown woman. Such people are human monstrosities and were born wrong. If you ask me why and how, listen, and the story shall be fully, fairly, yet briefly told. Ooh, this is so controversial. Oh my God. That's going to piss so many people off. Oh, shit. Controversial, and it was like written in the 1800s. I love it. Oh my gosh. All right, you guys. This is where I'm going to call it today for this book. But I'm glad I came back and visited this. I really do want to get through this information. I know it's so controversial. I was just like, I don't know. But I mean, for my own self, for sure. But why not? I'm curious. I'm sure others are too. But yeah, I am. I do intend to come back and read some more of the DMT book tonight. But we'll see what shakes, right? That's a lot of good stuff to think about. I do think there is such thing as like a rebirth, though. And there are ways, even if it's a miracle. Hey, Kendricks, welcome in. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Awesome-o. Oh, awesome. I'm glad you loved that. That's such a juicy read, right? He's got so many good books. Yeah, everybody go check out Robert Seffer. Yeah, and everybody check out Paschal Beverly Randolph. PBR for short. It's easy to remember, right? Okay, y'alls. I love you. I wish you wonderful Fridays. Maybe I'll see you guys later today too. And until then, mwah, do it like you feel it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.